Chosen one. Stop scrolling. Heaven has paused everything, and I mean everything, to call your attention to this divine moment. Not by accident, not by coincidence, but by appointment. You, listening right now, are the reason time itself has slowed. The courtroom of heaven just opened its eternal book, and your name echoed through its chambers. Yes, your name. That name the enemy tried to bury. That identity you almost gave up on. That purpose you nearly forgot in the midst of the pain. The book was opened, and your name was called. Chosen one. Listen to me carefully. This is a divine intervention. What you are hearing right now is not from this world. It is a signal from another realm. Heaven has dispatched this word to reach your ears because a shift has been commanded in the spirit. You've cried out too long. You've battled in silence too often. And now, heaven responds. You were never random, never overlooked, never ordinary. You are a marked one. You are God's chosen one. From the moment you entered this world, even before that, there was an assignment written over your life. One hell has tried everything to destroy, but they failed. You are still standing. You are still here. And heaven still has a plan. Let the world scroll past. Let the noise rise around you. But you, stay here. Hear this, because what you're about to receive is not just a message, it's a confirmation, a divine alert that the war you've been in was never in vain. The battles, the betrayals, the breakdowns, it all had a reason, because you are the one, the chosen one, called to shake the gates of hell and carry heaven's glory into this generation. You've walked through shadows darker than most. You've endured nights of silent weeping, wondering if anyone saw, wondering if even God had turned his face away. But no, he was watching, he was shaping, he was preparing. And now, the time has come. The word of the Lord came through the prophet Malachi, chapter 3, verse 16. Then those who feared the Lord spoke to one another, and the Lord listened and heard them. A book of remembrance was written before him for those who fear the Lord and honor his name. That's what just happened in the Spirit. Your name was written again in heaven's remembrance book. Your reverence wasn't missed. Your tears weren't wasted. You were never forgotten. You were recorded. You are chosen. Not for comfort, but for consequence. You carry a weight, a glory, a legacy. That's why people never understood you. That's why you felt like the outsider. That's why you could never blend in, even when you tried. Because you weren't born to blend in. You were born to stand out, to disrupt, to illuminate. Look around you. Feel it. Something is shifting even now. This isn't emotional hype. This is spiritual reality. Heaven has sounded your alarm, and every principality, every spirit of delay, every stronghold of fear, they all felt it. They all know your time is here. Listen, God didn't call the perfect. He called the willing. He didn't wait for your life to be polished. He called you in the middle of the mess, because he knew the end from the beginning. He saw the crown before the chaos. He saw the mantle before the morning. You think you're late? No. Chosen one. You're right on schedule. God's schedule. Not the world's timeline. Not religion's calendar. The book was opened, and your name was read at the exact moment it was meant to be. Don't you dare question this. Don't let doubt rob you of this confirmation. Heaven is real. The war is real, but your calling is even more real. And this is your wake-up call. A trumpet blast over your destiny. No more running. No more hiding. No more shrinking. You are chosen. And today, heaven said your name. If this word is striking your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. There are others who need this same fire to be awakened. Like, share, subscribe right now, not just for you, but for the army God is raising up through voices like this. And in this holy moment, type this in the comments as a prophetic act. 777, the number of divine completion, of covenant, of heaven's perfect seal. The book was opened, and your name was called. Welcome to the beginning of everything. You were always set apart. Long before the world labeled you, God named you. Before your voice was heard in any room, your destiny was whispered in heaven. Long before you were misunderstood, misread, mishandled, you were marked, set apart. Not after you became strong, not after you learned how to pray, not after you got back up from your worst failure, but from the very beginning. You were not made to fit in, because your blueprint came from outside this world. Your soul was written in a divine language. That's why nothing in this life ever fully explained you. That's why the world's systems never made sense. That's why no amount of success, validation, applause, or attention ever settled that holy ache inside you. Because you were made for more. Because you were made for Him. Chosen one. You've always felt different, not because something is wrong with you, but because something is right. The tension you've lived with wasn't punishment. It was prophecy. The discomfort was a reminder that this world was never your home. The hunger in your spirit wasn't lack. It was alignment with a higher kingdom. And that pressure you've been under, it was the weight of being set apart for a time such as this. You weren't rejected. You were reserved. There were rooms God didn't allow you into, not because you weren't good enough, but because you were too important to be contaminated. There were people He removed, not because they didn't value you, but because they couldn't carry what you carry. There were platforms you watched others stand on, wondering why you were still hidden. But now you see, they weren't prepared to hold what you were born to release. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are hidden, and hidden things are holy. Hidden things are protected. Hidden things are precious. And now the hiding place is about to break open. There's a reason you were drawn to the quiet places. Why your spirit longed for stillness when others chased noise. There's a reason you felt agitated by compromise, allergic to the fake, restless around spiritual dullness, because your spirit was always listening to something deeper, because the mark on your life has always been undeniable, even when no one else could see it. Even when you questioned it yourself. Some called it sensitivity. Others called it overthinking. But heaven called it discernment. Heaven called it consecration. Heaven called it being chosen. You see, you were never common. Even your wounds were uncommon. The warfare you faced wasn't normal. The early battles you fought were unfair, not because God abandoned you, but because hell recognized you. The enemy saw your potential before you did. That's why the attacks came early. That's why the battles were brutal. That's why your story isn't clean, because your oil was pressed from crushing. And now, that oil is about to flow. The prophet Jeremiah recorded the voice of God in the first chapter. Verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. You were not created and then called. You were called and then created. There is nothing accidental about you. Not your personality, not your voice, not even your pain. Everything in your life, every scar, every setback, every season of silence has been preparation for a moment, heaven already scheduled. You've always known you didn't quite belong. You laughed, but felt the hollowness. You smiled, but something remained heavy. You showed up for others, even while carrying silent burdens of your own. And still, God watched you. He watched you worship through the warfare. He saw how you never let your fire fully go out. Even when it flickered, it never died. And now that fire is about to become a furnace. Chosen one. Do not envy the ones who were celebrated while you were overlooked. Do not be bitter over the hands that applauded others and ignored you, because what you carry isn't meant to be cheered. It's meant to be revealed. And when God reveals what He has refined in you, the world won't be able to look away. You were always set apart. The loneliness wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The silence wasn't rejection. It was training. And the tears you cried when no one noticed, they watered the very ground you are about to rise from. You are not ordinary. You never were. The scroll in the spirit realm has been opened, and what was hidden is being revealed. Chosen one. There are things written about you in heavenly places that your natural mind has not yet caught up with. Things that were sealed until now. Appointments, mantles, mandates, specific instructions and promises held in reserve until the appointed hour. And this is that hour. Do you feel it? The trembling in your spirit, the restlessness that refuses to settle for the ordinary, the way your heart burns when you hear the truth. You're not imagining that. Your spirit is reacting to something that was opened above you, because when heaven unseals a scroll bearing your name, the earth starts shifting under your feet. You've been asking why things suddenly feel different, why your tolerance for compromise has vanished, why you're losing interest in what used to distract you. It's because the scroll of your destiny is speaking now. Your spirit recognizes the sound, even if your mind can't articulate it. These are not general promises. These are personalized instructions. Heaven is calling your assignment to the front line. In ancient times, a scroll carried legal weight. It held inheritances, bloodline records, and royal decrees. In the realm of the spirit, it's no different. The scroll that bears your name holds evidence of why you were born, of why you survived, of why hell tried to silence you before you ever found your voice. You think it was just trauma, just random warfare. No, hell has read parts of your scroll too, and it terrified them. The demonic realm knew that if you ever awakened to who you truly are, everything would change. They saw the impact you would make. They saw the souls tied to your obedience. They saw the altars that would be torn down when you stepped into authority. And so they did what they always do: distract, discourage, delay. But they couldn't destroy, because the scroll remained sealed until heaven chose to open it. And now that it's opened, nothing can reverse it. What is written is written. The word of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 4, speaks with weight. I wept and wept, because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside. But then the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. Jesus himself, the only one worthy, has opened the seal that activates your next season. That alone should send chills down your spine. Not a preacher, not a prophet, not a podcast. The Lion of Judah tore open the next page of your story. And now the heavens are announcing it in the spirit realm. This is why the atmosphere around you feels heavier. The warfare has intensified because what was once hidden about you is no longer hidden. The enemy has caught the scent of movement. He knows your scroll has been read in the courts of heaven. You may feel like nothing has changed in the natural, but spiritually, everything has shifted. New angels have been assigned to you. Old strongholds have been exposed. Prophetic dreams are increasing. Discernment is sharpening. And if you're honest, you can feel the weight of your calling rising from the ashes. Chosen one, you must treat your life differently now. The casual is over. The passive has ended. The scroll demands alignment. It demands surrender. You don't have time to explain your calling to people who aren't even praying. You don't have the luxury to delay obedience for the sake of comfort. This scroll carries fire, and it's resting on your hands. Everything you've been through was preparation to hold this moment without dropping it. The pain, the betrayal, the hidden training, it all forged you into a vessel strong enough to carry what others would have wasted. You're not perfect, but you're positioned, and heaven is trusting you to move. Type this in the comments. My name echoes. End of Clive. Why this matters? Because in the spirit realm, names carry sound. When the scroll was opened, your name wasn't quietly read. It was proclaimed, echoed, resounded across angelic realms. Heaven heard it. Hell heard it. Now earth must hear your agreement. When you type it, you're aligning your voice with what God has already announced. You're saying, I agree with heaven. My time has come. My assignment has awakened. I will not be silent. There is power in agreement, power in the echo, and power when your faith adds volume to what was declared over you before you were even born. Your name echoes, and you are rising. Every battle was proof. Chosen one. You didn't imagine the fire. You didn't exaggerate the weight. What you walked through was real, more real than most people will ever understand. And yet, you are still here, still breathing, still standing, even if your knees are shaking, because heaven never forgot who you are. Even when you forgot yourself, the battles you faced weren't random. They were confirmation. The warfare was not evidence of your weakness. It was proof of your calling. The enemy never fights the ones who pose no threat. He only launches attacks on those who carry something valuable, something eternal, something disruptive to the kingdom of darkness. You thought you were under attack because you were broken. But the truth is far more dangerous. You were attacked because you are whole. Because even with all the damage the world tried to do to you, your spirit never bowed. You never surrendered your light. You never stopped hoping, even when you didn't have the words to pray. And that alone made you dangerous. Look back. Chosen one. Think on it. From childhood, before you even knew how to protect yourself, you were already facing storms adults couldn't handle. Emotional wounds, betrayals, rejection, abandonment, things that should have broken you, but only made you wiser, stronger, sharper. Every tear became a sword. Every scar became a shield. Your story has not been easy, but ease was never the goal. Refining was. that furnace you walked through. It wasn't meant to destroy you. It was designed to burn off what couldn't follow you into your next season. The fire didn't consume you. It revealed you, the real you, the warrior, the survivor, the prophetic voice wrapped in flesh and bone, scarred but sacred, chosen one. Listen carefully. Every attack on your life was a clue, a spiritual breadcrumb pointing to what you carry. The earlier the battle began, the greater the mantle that rests upon you. That's why it felt like you were being crushed before you even had the language to cry out. Because your destiny was activated early and hell noticed. Hell always moves early when greatness is born. The enemy couldn't stop your birth, so he tried to crush your becoming. He couldn't block your anointing, so he tried to manipulate your environment. He couldn't erase the scroll written over your life, so he tried to break your mind so you'd never read it. But you made it. Somehow, even in the smoke, even in the chaos, even in the confusion, you made it through. That alone is a miracle. You didn't survive by accident. You survived by prophecy. Your life has been preserved by divine intent. Even when you didn't know what you were being preserved for, you were protected from things you didn't even know were aiming at you. Not because you were lucky, but because you were chosen. And even now, if you listen with your spirit, you'll hear the whisper, "This was never punishment. It was preparation." End of quote. The word of the Lord came through the psalmist in chapter 34. Verse 19, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." End of quote. That's you. Afflicted? Yes. But also delivered. Marked by fire, but not consumed. Battered, but not destroyed. You may carry the smell of smoke in your testimony, but the oil on your head outweighs it. You must understand, if your life had been easy, you would have settled. You would have blended in. You would have grown comfortable in comfort, never reaching for the realm of glory. But instead, your pain taught you how to pray. Your struggle carved space for sensitivity to the Spirit. Your loneliness taught you to hear God in the silence. And now, you carry authority, not because you studied for it, but because you bled for it. And you carry compassion, because when you see others suffer, you don't look down on them, you remember. You remember what it's like to cry alone, to fight invisible battles, to smile while breaking on the inside. You walk in spiritual authority and empathy. That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you trustworthy. You've been tested, and the test was never to expose your weakness. It was to reveal your endurance, and heaven saw it all. Every trial, every quiet breakdown, every late-night warfare moment where you whispered, "God, I can't do this anymore," and then still woke up the next day to try again. That was your victory. That was your proving ground. So now you know, the battles were never the end of your story. They were the beginning of your unveiling. You are proof that oil only flows from the crushed, and that crowns are reserved for those who conquered in silence. The enemy tried to erase you. From the moment your light entered this world, darkness reacted. You didn't choose this war. You were born into it. Not because of a curse, but because of a calling. The moment heaven marked you, hell moved to counterattack. And ever since, there's been a quiet war against your name. The mission was subtle but specific, to erase you before you were revealed, to wipe out your identity before your influence could ever take root, to confuse you so deeply that you'd voluntarily abandon your assignment, thinking it was all just imagination, just emotion, just coincidence. But chosen one, it didn't work. You're still here, still breathing, still standing in the very space hell said you'd never survive. That alone is not just survival. It's testimony. It's living proof that you are protected, preserved, and purposeful. Let's be honest, the attacks weren't always dramatic. Some were quiet, calculated. They didn't always come with noise. They came with numbness. Sudden disinterest in things that once brought you joy. Moments where the weight of invisibility felt heavier than any pain. Times when you questioned if your life even mattered. That was the enemy trying to erase you from within. Because when darkness can't kill you from the outside, it tries to silence you from the inside. It goes after your memory, your worth, your confidence. It turns people you loved into weapons. It warps your thoughts until you doubt your own goodness, until you forget the sound of your own voice. But even in all that, your spirit stayed awake, even if it was quiet, even if it was trembling, even if it was just barely holding on, it stayed lit. That small fire, flickering, but fierce, was the very proof that you were never defeated. And God, He saw it all. He never left. He never blinked. While the enemy plotted your deletion, God was building your delivery. You thought it was punishment, but it was protection. You thought it was rejection, but it was redirection. You thought you were buried, but heaven was planting you deeper out of reach from the hands trying to dig you up and distort you. The book of Job, chapter 5, verse 12, declares this truth with piercing clarity. He thwarts the plans of the crafty, so that their hands achieve no success. Ivan, that verse wasn't written for someone else. It was written for you. Every snare set for your feet, God dismantled. Every tongue that rose against you, He silenced. Every plan that was meant to erase your name, God overturned it and used the ashes to reveal your authority. Chosen one, you are not erased. You are being revealed. This moment, this message, is not random. It is resurrection. It is the echo of heaven's courtroom, proclaiming again that your name still stands, that the scroll is still open, that the chapter is not closed. In fact, it's just beginning. You may have walked through trauma. You may carry scars. But listen closely. Your scars are not evidence of defeat. They are signatures, seals of survival. Heaven's fingerprints proving that hell couldn't finish the job. And now, I'll speak plainly, not to impress, but to invite. If this word has pierced through the noise in your life, if your spirit leapt, even when your mind didn't fully understand why, then don't let this moment pass by silently. Like this message, not for me, not for vanity, not for clicks, but as a sacred signal, a way of saying to heaven, yes, I hear you. I receive this. Every like becomes a light in the dark, a personal amen from the spirit inside you that knows this is more than words, it's alignment. Share it not just because it's powerful, but because someone else is hanging by a thread right now. And what set your soul ablaze today might be the very thing that pulls theirs out of the pit tomorrow. Don't underestimate what one share can do. You might never meet them, but your obedience could be the lifeline they've been begging God for. Subscribe to this space, because your spirit needs a place where the noise of this world doesn't drown out the whisper of God. A place where truth is not edited for comfort, where fire still falls, where heaven still speaks to the broken the bold, and the becoming. And if this is that place for you, stay connected. And if you feel it in your heart, if this word has unlocked something real in your life, consider sowing into this fire. Give as you are led, not by obligation, but by revelation. Because when you pour into what's pouring into you, something powerful happens. You partner with heaven. You multiply the sound. You help carry this message further, faster, deeper, to the ones still sitting in silence, waiting to remember who they are. The enemy tried to erase you, but your name remains. You were marked in the midnight hour, chosen one. While others were asleep spiritually and literally, heaven moved. You may not have seen it. You may not have heard a sound, but something in the unseen shifted while the world was distracted. In the dark stillness of your loneliest season, God placed a mark upon your life that no man, no system, no demon in hell can remove. You weren't marked in a stadium. You weren't marked on a stage. You were marked in the midnight, in the silence, in the place where you questioned your purpose and nearly gave up. That's where heaven branded you with oil. Not public oil, private oil, costly oil. Do you remember those nights? The ones where no one checked on you, where your tears soaked the pillow and your soul whispered, God, are you even real? It was in those moments, not the loud ones, but the hidden ones, that heaven saw the purity of your hunger. You weren't performing. You weren't pretending. You were raw, cracked open, bleeding from battles no one else could see. And God responded with a mark, not one made with ink or carved by hands, but one sealed by fire. The mark of the called, the seal of the set apart. You carry it even now. You've felt it in rooms where your spirit stirred while others were numb. You felt it when compromise grieved you more than it grieved anyone else. You felt it in places where your discernment screamed while the crowd clapped. That is the mark. It's what sets you apart. It's what makes it impossible for you to stay in environments that don't carry the same frequency. You can't fake it anymore. You can't force yourself to be okay with lukewarmness. The mark won't let you. Some tried to call it pride. Others said you were too intense. But deep down, you knew the truth. This isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. You were marked. And now, you can't unfeel what your spirit knows. It was in the midnight hour that heaven chose you, not when you were strongest, but when you were the most surrendered. It wasn't your talent that qualified you. It wasn't your eloquence, your gifting, or your record of righteousness. It was your broken yes. That was all it took. And that yes still echoes. The Bible records a pattern. God often moves in the night, not just symbolically, but literally. It was at midnight that Paul and Silas sang their way into freedom and shook the foundations of a prison. It was during the night that God passed over Egypt and delivered his people. And it was at night, alone in a garden, that Jesus wept, blood wrestling with the weight of obedience, and said, "Not my will, but yours be done." Oh, this is the pattern. Heaven marks those who surrender when no one is watching. You were chosen in the dark so you could carry light without pride. You were refined in silence so that your voice would carry power when it finally spoke. And you were broken in private so that your restoration would carry undeniable authority. The prophet Isaiah recorded in chapter 62, verse 2, "The nations will see your righteousness, and all kings your glory. You will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. That name isn't just a label, it's a legacy. It means heaven has renamed you. Heaven has marked you. And it was done when no one else was awake. That's why you can't go back. That's why your old patterns don't fit anymore. That's why your appetite is changing. The mark is rewriting your identity. You're not just trying to live a better life, you're stepping into a new one, authored by the Spirit and sealed by fire. You may not look different on the outside, but in the realm of the Spirit, your name glows. Angels know it. Demons fear it. Heaven calls it. And you are now being summoned into the next phase of your assignment. This moment right here, reading these words, is not casual. It's the sound of your midnight mark being remembered, reignited, reactivated. So let your yes rise again. If this word confirms what your spirit already knew, then do this as a prophetic response. Comment the number 444 below. Why? Because biblically, 4 is the number of divine foundation and completion in the created world. 4 winds. 4 directions. 4 corners of the earth. Triple fours symbolize heaven establishing something unshakable in you. When you type it, you're saying, yes, Lord, anchor me, build me, mark me again. Oh, your midnight wasn't wasted. Your breaking wasn't pointless, and your tears were never invisible. You were marked, not when the spotlight was on you, but when the night surrounded you, and now the dawn is near. Your light terrifies darkness. Chosen one. You need to understand, the reason you've been fought so viciously has nothing to do with your personality, your background, or your mistakes, and everything to do with your presence. You carry light, not ordinary light, not religion, not performance, not shallow inspiration. You carry revelation light, heaven-born, spirit-fueled, darkness disrupting light, and darkness does not attack what doesn't threaten it. From the beginning, you've been a disruption, a contradiction, the kind of person who walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without saying a word, the kind of presence that makes people either open their hearts or manifest their hidden demons. You've never blended in, not because you didn't try, but because your light wouldn't let you. Even as a child, you sensed things others missed. You felt heaviness when no one else acknowledged it. You discerned motives before people even opened their mouths. That wasn't paranoia. That was light scanning, exposing, revealing. You thought you were just sensitive. You thought something was wrong with you. But the truth is, you were never called to ignore darkness. You were called to expose it. You are heaven's flashlight in dark spaces. This is why certain people turned against you for no reason. Why some smiled to your face, but slandered you behind your back. It wasn't always personal. It was spiritual. Your light made the darkness in them uncomfortable. Not because you judged them, but because you reminded them of a truth they were trying to ignore. That's what light does. It reveals what's hidden. It forces decision. And when people aren't ready to face their own shadows, they often turn on the ones carrying the flame. But you didn't burn out. You kept shining. Even when the weight of rejection nearly crushed your chest, you kept loving. Even after betrayal, you kept praying. Even when your prayers seemed to hit a wall. And that is exactly why you're still dangerous. Your light isn't emotional hype. It's not a phase. It's not seasonal. It's identity. It's spiritual DNA. You were born from glory. You were created in light. You were woven together by a God who is light. And the darkness has always recognized you, even when you didn't recognize yourself. There is something about the way you endure, the way you worship while bleeding, the way you intercede, even when you're the one needing help, the way you stay soft in a hard world, the way you refuse to turn bitter, even though bitterness would be justified. That is rare. That is radiant. That is holy. Chosen one. Hear me. You don't just carry light. You are light. Not because of your behavior, but because of your birthright. You are a child of the light. And everywhere you go, darkness has to make a decision, flee or fight. And when it can't flee, it attacks. This explains your battles. This explains the intensity. This explains the misunderstandings, the losses, the feeling of being constantly misunderstood. And yet, the light is still here, still flickering in you, still pressing through your weary bones, still igniting fire in your words, your prayers, your presence. You can't uncarry what God has placed inside you. The Apostle Paul wrote this divine truth in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 6. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. Oh, you are not shining from self. You are shining from within, from a place God himself ignited. So do not be surprised when the resistance comes. Don't be confused when spiritual warfare shows up the moment you step into clarity. Don't doubt your light just because the room reacts. Reacting is what darkness does before it's evicted. You're not here to entertain it. You're here to confront it. Not with anger, not with ego, but with presence, with truth, with stillness, with the kind of authority that doesn't need to shout to be effective. You carry that. You are the breaker in your bloodline, the disruptor in dead systems, the one with fire in your voice and clarity in your soul. Not perfect, but persistent. Not flawless, but fearless. And hell knows it. Don't deem it. Don't shrink to fit. Don't apologize for radiating what God placed in you. You were meant to be seen, not for self-glory, but for God's. You were meant to confront darkness not with violence, but with vision. And you were born to burn, not out, but bright. Let the darkness tremble, because you're not just entering rooms anymore. You're shifting them. You were born for this generation. Chosen one. The timing of your birth was no accident. You did not arrive too early. You were not born too late. You were sent here with divine precision, released into this timeline by the hand of a sovereign God who looked at all of history and said, "Now, send them now." Len, there is something inside you that only this generation needs. Not the next. Not the last. This one. You weren't designed to mimic what came before you. You weren't crafted to copy someone else's mantle. That's why certain traditions never sat right with you. That's why stale religion never satisfied your hunger. You weren't being rebellious. You were being awakened. Because what you carry isn't just old fire recycled, it's a fresh blueprint, a new sound, a kingdom vibration tuned for this hour in human history. And whether you've realized it or not, your entire life has been heaven's investment into this specific generation. Your trials, they taught you empathy. Your losses, they birthed discernment. Your silence, it forged endurance. Your rejection, it kept you hidden, until the noise around you would no longer drown out the purity within you. And now, the veil is lifting. The generation is groaning, and your spirit is stirring, because the assignment buried deep inside of you is waking up. Look around. This generation is starving, not for trends, not for polished speeches, not for viral noise, but for something real, something rooted, something anointed. They're craving deliverance, but don't know what to call it. They're surrounded by counterfeit fires, but can't find warmth. And that's why you're here. You carry the thing they forgot existed, the unfiltered presence of God. Your story may not be perfect, but it's rough, and that's what makes it powerful. You don't speak from a place of theory, you speak from trenches, from nights where you almost walked away from it all, and somehow still stood. That's what gives your words weight. That's what gives your presence fire. This generation doesn't need a performer. They need a prophet. They don't need more information. They need impartation. And you, yes, you carry that within you. It's not because you asked for it. You were born with it. Heaven hardwired your spirit to be sensitive to this age. You feel things others overlook. You grieve over things others justify. You dream in ways that seem disconnected from the world's logic. And yet, everything inside you is perfectly designed for what this generation needs to see. Hear and touch. Chosen one. Stop disqualifying yourself because of what you've been through. The oil you carry was not birthed in perfection. It was crushed out of chaos. It was refined in failure. It was purified in wilderness, seasons where God was the only one who knew your name. That process wasn't punishment. It was placement. Heaven has been building a solution in secret, and now the cry of this generation is pulling that solution into view. You. The word of the Lord spoke through Queen Esther's story in chapter 4, verse 14. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. That time is not in theory. It's now. And that position is not about politics. It's about posture. You are being positioned in your sphere, whether it's your home, your work, your digital space, your art, your voice to represent something this generation can no longer live without. Heaven's heartbeat. This is why your sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's a feature. This is why your prayers feel heavier now, because heaven is trusting you with deeper things. This is why your dreams are more vivid, because your spirit is being drawn into prophetic spaces, tuned for the rescue of a people drowning in noise. You were never made to blend in. You were made to bridge, to be the in-between, the connector, the one who walks between two worlds and translates the language of the Spirit into a sound this generation can finally recognize. And yes, it's weighty. And yes, it costs. But you wouldn't be here if you weren't built for it. There's no one coming after you to do your part. No backup version of your voice. No substitute for your sound. If you don't rise, a gap will remain. But you are rising, because heaven knew what it was doing when it sent you here, and hell knows exactly what it's doing trying to stop you. You were born for this generation, and it's about to see why. Prophecy is in your bloodline. Chosen one. What you're carrying didn't start with you. It runs deeper than your memory. It's older than your birth. What's been stirring in your spirit was planted in your family line generations ago. Prayers were prayed for you that you never heard. Battles were fought in silence for a future they wouldn't live to see, but you would. You are not the first flame. You are the continuation of a fire that refused to die. You're not just a product of pain. You're the answer to prophecy. What has felt like random warfare in your life was actually generational resistance. The enemy saw something awakening in your line, and it wasn't just you. It was what was hidden in your family's DNA. A call, a covenant, a voice that had been stifled, silenced, or ignored by those who didn't know what to do with it. But it didn't die. It traveled. It waited. It passed down until it reached someone who wouldn't bury it again. That someone is you. You've probably sensed it for years. That strange pressure, that invisible weight, that unshakable feeling that there was something you were supposed to do, even when you didn't know what it was. That wasn't anxiety. That was inheritance. And it was never meant to make you feel overwhelmed. It was meant to awaken you. You are the manifestation of long-awaited answers. Your grandmother's tears watered this. Your great-grandfather's worship sustained it. Maybe they never stepped into their full calling. Maybe fear swallowed their voice. Maybe life bruised their hope. But their spirits cried out for redemption, for restoration, for someone in the family line who would not only believe, but obey. And heaven said, "Let it be them." Death. So here you are chosen to break the silence and carry what others dropped. That's why the opposition feels ancient, because it is. You're not just breaking habits, you're breaking bloodline strongholds. You're not just making new decisions, you're rewriting old agreements. The curses you've been confronting are older than your name, but the power working through you is older than creation. Don't underestimate your obedience. You saying yes in this season is correcting decisions made decades ago. You choosing holiness is silencing agreements your ancestors didn't know they signed. You stepping into identity is awakening prophetic streams that had been dammed up for generations. You are not just a breakthrough, you are a lineage shift. The enemy hoped you'd be distracted, addicted, bitter, or passive like those who came before. He hoped you'd inherit the wounds without ever touching the weapons. But you're different. You questioned the cycle. You challenged the pattern. You refused to believe that the dysfunction was normal. And that, right there, was the sound of prophecy waking up in your bloodstream. The word of the Lord gives voice to this in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 17. In the last days, God says, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams." You are the son. You are the daughter. You are the one the Spirit is falling on. You are the dream becoming flesh. This is why the warfare is generational, because the anointing is too. The mantle didn't appear out of nowhere. It was inherited not through genetics, but through submission, through obedience, through sacrifice. You are walking in oil others paid for, but you're also paying a price to pass it on in even greater measure, because it doesn't stop with you. You are a door, and once you open, everything behind you has to pass through too. There is a sound in your blood, a roar waiting to be released, a cry from generations past that has been waiting for your yes. You've been marked not just for ministry, but for memory. Heaven remembers the cries of the righteous, and now those cries are being answered in your life, in your body, in your mind, in your home. You are the prophecy fulfilled, and the prophecy still unfolding. Let the old altars fall. Let the new ones rise. Type this in the comments. I carry legacy. Why? Because you do. You are not just living for yourself. You're carrying the story of those who came before and the future of those who will come after. When you type these words, you're declaring to the spirit realm, I accept the assignment. I honor the ones who prayed before me. I step forward, not just for me, but for the generations tied to my obedience. You're not just breaking curses, you're carrying legacy. You're not just surviving, you're fulfilling ancient prophecy. Chosen doesn't mean comfortable. You weren't called because life would be easy. You were called because heaven knew you could carry weight others would collapse under. Being chosen isn't a trophy, it's a responsibility. It comes wrapped in fire. It arrives in silence. It matures in pressure. And yet, here you are. You've likely looked around at others and wondered, why do they get to glide while I'm always climbing? Why does it seem like I'm carrying more, breaking more, weeping more, but receiving less? The answer is hidden in your calling. Those who carry oil must walk through pressing. Your process wasn't proof of God abandoning you. It was evidence that He trusted you. He trusted your resilience. He trusted your yes, even when it came through clenched teeth. He trusted your surrender when you didn't understand the assignment, only the pain. The chosen are refined in obscurity, not in applause. Heaven stretches those it intends to send, and you've been stretched. The spaces you outgrew weren't a sign that you're too much. They were confirmation that your destiny required a room with higher ceilings. The loneliness you faced wasn't rejection. It was reservation. God was clearing space around you, not to isolate you, but to incubate you, because what you're called to carry doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in consecration. Chosen doesn't mean favored in the way the world defines it. It means tested. It means trusted. It means there were doors you didn't walk through because heaven blocked them. It means you couldn't do what others got away with, not because God was punishing you, but because the standard on your life was higher. You've been carved, stripped, and set apart, not as decoration, but as a vessel. The weight you feel isn't random. The tension between who you were and who you're becoming is the sign that the old you can't carry the next season. Discomfort is heaven's way of pushing you into your assignment. If it still felt good back there, you'd never step forward. But now the ache is loud. The pull is undeniable. You've been awakened, and you cannot unknow what your spirit now sees. The Apostle Paul captured this beautifully in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 18. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. That's what it is, glory. It's what's forming in the dark, not visible yet, but promised. The pressure you've been under is not punishment, it's preparation. The tears you've cried were not wasted. They were water for the roots of something eternal. And the pain you felt was not in vain. It was evidence that something sacred was being born. Glory rarely announces itself in comfort. It arrives in surrender. So what now? Where do you go from here? You keep yielding. You keep walking. You keep trusting that if God allowed this weight, He's also placed strength in you that even you haven't seen yet. And as you walk this path shaking, unsure, but still willing, know this: you are not alone. And if this word feels like a mirror, not just something you read, but something that read you, then pause here for a moment. You don't need to rush past what's stirring. Let it settle. And if your heart is saying, "This was for me," then let it speak. Tap the like button, not out of habit, but as a silent amen. Sometimes the smallest act of agreement becomes the loudest echo in heaven. Share it not for numbers, but because someone else is silently suffocating under the pressure of being chosen, and your act of obedience might be their lifeline. Subscribe not to a channel, but to a rhythm of reminders. If this space nourishes your soul, then stay near the table. Because the walk of the chosen can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be silent. And if this word has done more than touch you, if it's reawakened something, broken something, healed something, then consider giving back. Sow into what sowed into you, not because it's expected, but because gratitude that moves becomes fuel, and that fuel carries the sound further to those still waiting in their own wilderness. You are chosen, not for ease, not for applause, but for impact, for holiness, for glory. And glory will cost you everything the old version of you held dear. But what's coming is worth it. Hidden, not forgotten. You've been asking questions in the quiet places. Questions you don't say out loud because part of you fears the answer. God, did you forget about me? Did I miss it? Was all of this just in my head? You've looked around and watched others be elevated, celebrated, launched, while you, the one who stayed faithful in the fire, remained invisible, but chosen one. Heaven wants you to know you were not overlooked. You were hidden on purpose. Hiddenness is not abandonment. It's protection. When God hides you, it's not because you aren't ready. It's because what you carry is too rare to be rushed and too valuable to be exposed before its time. The wilderness was not a delay. It was a cocoon. Think of Moses. He wasn't born in Pharaoh's palace. Though he would confront Pharaoh, he was hidden in a basket, tucked into reeds, raised in obscurity. Think of David, anointed in private, then sent back to the field while his brothers stood in the lineup. Or even Jesus, hidden in Nazareth for 30 years before releasing 3 years of visible ministry that altered all of human history. The hidden seasons are not punishment. They are permission to grow without the pressure to perform. When God hides you, He shields you from sabotage. He blocks the eyes of those who would mishandle your gift in its premature form. He keeps you covered so that your roots go deep before your branches ever reach out. Because if the foundation isn't strong, the fall will be loud. And He loves you too much to let your influence outgrow your character. Chosen one. What felt like being forgotten was actually divine restraint. You saw others skip the process and sprint into spotlight. You watched people with lesser oil receive greater platforms. You smiled through gritted teeth as heaven kept you in the shadows, unsure if anyone would ever see what you've been stewarding in silence. But God saw it, and He wasn't grading you on visibility. He was watching your consistency. He watched you serve when you had nothing left to give. He watched you forgive without receiving an apology. He watched you sow when no one knew your name. He watched you worship in rooms where your name was never called. He watched you choose holiness even when compromise looked easier. And He said, "This one is ready, not to be seen, but to be trusted." And the hiding place became your sanctuary. Yes, it was lonely, but it was also sacred. It was the place where your voice found its true sound, not the echo of others, but the resonance of heaven. It was where your discernment sharpened, your flesh deed, your intimacy deepened, and most importantly, it was where the audience of one became enough. The book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verse 2, declares, He made my mouth like a sharpened sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in his quiver. You weren't just being delayed, you were being sharpened, concealed, refined, polished. The arrow that flies the farthest is the one that is pulled back the longest. You've been pulled back. Now the tension in your spirit isn't a sign that God forgot. It's the mark of release. That holy discomfort, it's the Spirit whispering, "Get ready, because the hiding place is opening." And when God reveals what he refined in secret, no man can take credit. No flesh can say, "We made them," because the anointing you carry wasn't man-made. It was God-forged. So don't curse the cave that kept you. Don't resent the years that felt wasted. Nothing was lost. Nothing was random. Every moment in the dark was used. Every tear watered your mantle. Every hour of silence taught you how to listen not to applause, but to instruction. You are not late. You are not disqualified. And you are certainly not forgotten. Heaven knows your name. Hell fears your name. And earth is about to hear your name, not for fame, but for function, not to make you a celebrity, but to make you a vessel, a solution, a sound from heaven wrapped in human form, carrying answers to questions this generation doesn't even know how to ask yet. So lift your head. This silence is not the end. It's the wind-up before the release. And when God shoots you out of hiding, it will be with precision, with force, and with purpose. You'll land exactly where you were born to be. You were hidden, but never forgotten. Judgment begins in the house. Chosen one. The shaking you felt is not random. The spiritual unrest, the shifting of relationships, the way people are being exposed, removed, or suddenly distanced from you. This isn't chaos, it's cleansing. Heaven is drawing a line, not in the world first, but in the house, in the body, in the places where titles have replaced truth and influence has been mistaken for intimacy. Judgment is not always thunder. Sometimes it's separation. Sometimes it's God saying, "No more pretending. No more mixture. No more blending the holy with the hollow." And you've been feeling it. The weight, the tension, the strange clarity that makes you uncomfortable in spaces you used to call safe. This is heaven awakening your spirit, not to condemn you, but to calibrate you. Because when God judges his house, it's not to destroy it. It's to prepare it for glory. You've been walking through your own private shaking, not because you're in sin, but because he's pulling the sacred out of the surface. You felt him calling you out of shallow things, away from loud, hollow distractions, away from religious performance, and deeper into a lifestyle that costs but also carries. You can't ignore it anymore. You can't laugh at what grieves your spirit. You can't excuse what your heart no longer agrees with. The shaking has come to you personally because heaven refuses to let you play small while carrying something eternal. This is the line. The days of casually following Jesus are ending. The gray is fading. Lukewarm is leaking out of your spirit because the Spirit is lighting fire in you that refuses to coexist with compromise. This is mercy fierce. Untamed mercy, calling you out of anything that dulls your oil. Heaven is raising up a remnant, and you are among them. Not the popular ones, not the polished ones, but the pure ones, the repentant ones, the hungry ones, the ones who may not be loud on social media, but are loud in the spirit. The ones who tremble when he speaks, who yield when he convicts, who love righteousness, even when it's costly, even when it means standing alone. This isn't about moral superiority. It's about spiritual sobriety. God is not looking for the flawless. He's looking for the faithful, for those who won't edit his voice to fit their comfort, for those who are willing to be misunderstood by man in order to be known by heaven. And yes, that means the shaking will continue. Systems are crumbling. Platforms are being purified. False fire is being extinguished. But don't let that scare you. Let it sober you. You don't need to fear the shaking if your foundation is built on him. You don't need to fear the judgment if you're living in alignment. When the wind comes, the house built on the rock will stand. The Apostle Peter wrote this truth with clarity in his first letter. Chapter 4, verse 17. For it is time for judgment to begin with God's household. And if it begins with us, what will the outcome be for those who do not obey the gospel of God? This isn't anger. It's awakening. And the fact that you feel it is proof you are his. You've been set apart not to escape the fire, but to walk through it without being consumed. You are being refined. And in this hour, God is cutting away everything in your life that can't carry his glory. He's removing distractions, dead weights, toxic attachments, lukewarm cycles, and even voices that sound good but aren't clean. Let him do it. This is not the time to cling to comfort. This is the time to cling to conviction, to consecrate again, to surrender again, to say, God, search me, purify me, burn what's not from you, even if I love it. That prayer is dangerous, but necessary, because judgment is coming through the door, not to condemn you, but to prepare you. And what's on the other side of obedience is deeper than blessing. It's authority. It's clarity. It's the kind of holiness that the world can't counterfeit and hell can't copy. So what now? Type this in the comments. 333. Why? Because the number 3 has always symbolized divine fullness, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and a triple 3 is a prophetic cry for complete consecration. You're saying, I agree with the shaking. I surrender to the fire. I choose the narrow way. Let my life reflect heaven's order, not man's opinion. Let everything in me come into alignment with everything in him. In one, you're not just responding, you're returning to the altar, to the weight, to the holiness you were born for. This isn't performance. This is purification. This is what the real ones look like. And you're one of them. You're one decision from destiny. It's not complicated. It's not buried in a mystery. The next shift in your life isn't waiting for another prophecy, another sign, another affirmation. It's waiting for your decision. One choice, one surrender, one holy yes that will set everything in motion. Because God has already opened the scroll. Heaven has already marked the time. The angels are already watching. And now, all of creation waits for you to move. Destiny doesn't chase comfort. It responds to obedience. You've stood at this threshold before, felt the pull, heard the whisper, sensed the urgency in your spirit. But hesitation took over. The cost seemed too high, the fear too loud. You told yourself you needed more clarity, but really, your spirit was just afraid of the commitment that clarity would require, because deep down, you know, this isn't just about your blessing. It's about your becoming. God won't force you. He never has. He will convict you. He will draw you. He will surround you with signs and speak through circumstances. But in the end, the turning point hinges on your choice. Not the emotions, not the environment, just our decision. And that's what makes this moment so holy. Because right now, you're standing in a spiritual hallway. Behind you are all the things you've known, the comfort zones, the people who shaped you, the patterns that protected you for a season but can't go where you're called. In front of you, the unknown, the uncharted, the promised. It's unfamiliar. Yes, but it's also anointed. This is the tension between bondage and breakthrough. The enemy won't stop you by force. He'll try to delay you by distraction. He'll make you doubt the urgency. He'll whisper things like, "Take your time. You're not ready. Don't be extreme. Don't be emotional." But those aren't just thoughts. They're spiritual resistance disguised as logic. Because hell knows what happens when you say yes. Everything shifts. The doors open. The favor activates. The clarity increases. The relationships align. The provision unlocks. The grace multiplies. The voices of fear begin to fade. The old habits suddenly feel foreign. The heaviness lifts. And most of all, you feel your spirit begin to breathe in a new way. It's not magic. It's not hype. It's the supernatural consequence of divine obedience. This one decision won't solve everything, but it will start everything. And maybe the decision isn't loud. Maybe it's not even public. Maybe it's not leaving your job or announcing your next move. Maybe it's quieter. Maybe it's the decision to forgive, to finally release what's been choking your heart for years. Maybe it's the decision to get serious about holiness. Maybe it's turning off the voices that keep feeding your fear. Maybe it's walking away from the person or place that keeps re-injuring what God is trying to heal. Whatever it is, you already know. You can feel it even now. The decision is pulsing in your chest. It's not confusion. It's invitation. The voice of the Lord echoes in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." Then, the decision you make now won't just affect you. It will echo into every generation that follows. This is legacy-level obedience. This is generational shift. Heaven isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be willing. Your destiny isn't waiting for the right atmosphere. It's waiting for agreement. And the most powerful moment in your life will not be when everyone else says yes to you. It will be when you say yes to Him. Because when you finally decide fully, completely, without apology, the resistance breaks, the fog lifts, and your steps will become sure, even if the road ahead isn't clear. That's what obedience does. It doesn't always give you sight, but it always gives you certainty. So pause here. Let the moment settle. You're not at a random crossroads. You're standing on holy ground. The place where decisions shift nations. The place where yes becomes warfare. The place where surrender becomes strategy. You are not just deciding what happens next week. You're deciding what heaven is allowed to release through your life. Don't rush. Don't run. But don't retreat either, because just on the other side of this decision is the version of you you've been praying for, and they're waiting. Rejection was your revelation. Chosen one. The doors that didn't open for you were never meant to. The rooms that didn't receive you were not your assignment. The people who couldn't love you the way you needed, they were never equipped to hold the weight of your calling. It wasn't personal. It was prophetic. God used rejection as revelation. Because sometimes it's not until you're denied that you finally see what you were truly made for. You prayed for clarity, and heaven answered with a closed door. You asked for confirmation, and God sent you silence. You wanted alignment, but He allowed separation. And even though it felt like abandonment at the time, it was actually divine protection. You see, what feels like rejection in the moment is often redirection in disguise. It's the mercy of God moving you before your roots go too deep in a place that cannot sustain your future. You wanted to stay. You tried to fit. You worked hard to be accepted, but they still misunderstood you. Not because you were broken, but because you were becoming. You didn't fail. You were filtered. God filters His vessels before He fills them. And filtering always begins with release. He released you from expectations that would have smothered your true identity. He released you from relationships that were secretly draining your fire. He released you from systems that wanted your gift, but not your growth. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it felt like loss. But in hindsight, you're starting to see the outline of God's hand in all of it. That heartbreak, it shook something loose in you. That betrayal, it woke up your discernment. That door that slammed shut, it redirected your entire path and saved you more pain down the road than you'll ever know. Rejection clarified your assignment. It purified your motives. It broke you away from counterfeit coverings. It stripped you of the need to perform. It forced you into a deeper dependence on God. And now, you no longer need applause to stay obedient. You no longer need approval to feel anointed. You've learned to be sent even when you weren't invited. That's revelation. It's knowing that your identity was never meant to be built in rooms that were never called to receive you. It's realizing that obscurity was sacred, that silence was your sanctuary, that every no pushed you closer to the only yes that mattered, the yes of heaven. That's why you no longer chase open doors. You wait for ones that bear your name in the Spirit. That's why your discernment has sharpened. You can feel when something isn't right, even if it looks good on the surface. You've walked with God long enough now to know that comfort doesn't equal calling, and acceptance doesn't always mean assignment. You've learned to listen deeper, to stay when it's not glamorous, to go when it doesn't make sense, to worship even when your heart is still bleeding. And in all of that, you've become dangerous to the enemy because rejection didn't break you, it built you. The Word of God speaks in the first letter of Peter, chapter 2, verse 4, as you come to Him, the living stone, rejected by humans but chosen by God and precious to Him. That's you. The one they overlooked is now being positioned as a foundation. The one they dismissed is now being anointed for authority. The one who didn't fit the mold is now being shaped into something heaven can use. And here's what makes it powerful. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to go back and prove them wrong, because the fruit will speak, the fire will fall, and the glory on your life will answer questions your mouth never has to. So let them remember you as misunderstood. Let them say you changed. Let them say you got too deep, too intense, too spiritual. That's fine. They never saw the fullness of what was in you anyway. You don't need them to believe in your future if God already spoke it into your bones. You don't need the platform you lost. You don't need the relationship that walked away. You don't need the space that couldn't see you. What you need, you already have. Revelation, the kind that only comes through rejection, the kind that opens your eyes, awakens your calling, burns off the dead weight, and launches you into the very thing you were designed for from the beginning. So now, you rise, not with bitterness, not with vengeance, not with performance. You rise with clarity, with peace, with authority, because rejection was never your ending. It was heaven's beginning. The mantle is falling on you now. Chosen one. This isn't symbolic anymore. It's not distant. It's not one day. It's now. The shift you've been sensing, the tension in your spirit, the pressure that's felt like 1,000 invisible hands stretching you beyond your limits. It's not random. It's the weight of a mantle descending, and it has your name on it. This is not a motivational moment. This is a prophetic one. You've been tested, not just in the obvious ways, but in secret places in your thoughts, in your motives, in the little decisions that nobody else could see but God. And with every test, heaven was watching. Will they still obey? Will they still trust me when nothing makes sense? Will they stay pure when no one applauds them? And you did. Maybe not perfectly, but consistently, genuinely, with trembling hands, but a willing heart. And now, the mantle fits. You didn't chase this. That's why it's real. You didn't manipulate your way into the spotlight. That's why heaven can trust you. You didn't fake fire to impress a crowd. That's why the oil on your life is uncontaminated. And that's why now, in this very moment, something ancient is being placed on your shoulders. This is bigger than gifting, bigger than platform. This is mantle. Heaven's assignment wrapped in spiritual weight. And it doesn't just come with responsibility. It comes with authority. You're not being called to carry something trendy. You're being called to carry something eternal. And mantles don't fall on the casual. They fall on the consecrated, the ones who died in the wilderness, the ones who worshipped through warfare, the ones who laid down everything they thought they were, just to become who heaven said they were from the beginning. Look at your journey. Can't you see it now? The long detours, the unexplainable delays, the pruning that felt cruel. All of it was preparation. The wilderness wasn't wasting your time, it was stretching your soul, making room for weight, because glory can't rest on shallow foundations. The prophet Elisha knew what it meant to follow a mantle, to pursue it with reverence, to be willing to burn his old life, the oxen, the plow, the past, just to walk into what God was preparing. He didn't ask for power. He asked for a double portion. And he received it, but not before walking in the dust of another man's journey. Watching, serving, learning. You've been in that season too. Watching others, serving faithfully, studying the path. And now it's your turn. The Word of God confirms this in the second book of Kings, chapter 2. Verse 13, Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. The mantle had fallen, and Elisha picked it up. That's where you are. The mantle is falling, but you still have to choose to pick it up. You still have to step into what's being handed to you. It won't attach to the unwilling. It won't rest on the half-hearted. It only responds to those who are ready to move without needing approval. And when you do, everything changes. Doors open differently. Prayer feels heavier. Your presence becomes disruptive to atmospheres that once embraced you. You'll notice people being drawn to you, not for your personality, but for what you carry. You'll feel more exposed, but also more protected. You'll speak less, but when you speak, it will shake things. Chosen one. This isn't charisma. It's covering. You've been marked by heaven. And now the weight of that mark is becoming visible. Some will question it. Others will envy it. But the ones who've walked through their own fire will recognize it, and they'll rise beside you, not in competition, but in confirmation. So let this be your moment of agreement. If this word confirms what you've already sensed, but haven't had the language to say, then don't scroll past it. Like this message as a quiet act of obedience, a moment where your spirit says, I recognize this. This is mine. Olen, share it not for numbers, but because someone else has been kneeling in the dust, waiting for a sign that they too are next in line. Subscribe if this space speaks the language of your soul. If the word is alive in you through what's being spoken here, don't wander. Stay near the flame. And if you feel led, if this word has not just reached you but restored you, then sow into the sound. Pour into the stream that's poured into you. When you support what stirs your spirit, you're not funding a voice. You're fueling the message God is using to wake up His remnant. Now, as a prophetic declaration, type in the comments, I wear it. Oh, why? Because heaven is not asking if you feel worthy, only if you're willing. When you type those words, you're agreeing with God's timing, not your perfection. You're declaring that you will not let fear delay what heaven has already confirmed. You're saying, I may be trembling, but I accept the weight. I embrace the call. I wear the mantle. Oh, this isn't just a phrase. It's a transaction, a transfer, a spiritual moment of putting on what has been falling toward you all along. A mantle has fallen, and now you wear it. You must burn the bridges. Chosen one. The season you are entering cannot support divided loyalties. What you're stepping into requires a full break from what once held you. No more maybe, no more just in case, no more halfway faith. This next chapter demands the total version of you fully yielded, fully present, fully clean. You cannot walk into your calling with escape routes mapped out. You cannot carry the mantle while clinging to the masks. There is no room for mixture. The bridges that once gave you comfort must now be set ablaze. Not because you hate where you came from, but because you can't return to it. Burning the bridge doesn't mean dishonoring the past. It means refusing to settle for it. Some of those bridges were emotional. Habits, people, old ways of thinking, old voices that still echo in your soul, trying to define you by outdated pain. Some bridges are internal, the version of you that kept yourself small, softening your voice to be palatable, hiding your anointing so others wouldn't feel threatened. That version can't go where you're going, and you know it. That's why your spirit's been restless. That's why joy has started to feel heavy in rooms you used to feel safe in. That's why even your silence feels louder lately. Because the old world you built is starting to crumble beneath the weight of who you're becoming. And it has to, because God won't allow the new you to stand on the old foundation. You weren't called to tiptoe your way into destiny. You were called to cross over, boldly, without apology, without the training wheels of your past identity. And that crossing requires fire. You have to burn the bridges of familiarity, the options you kept open, just in case. The relationships you maintained even when your spirit knew they were not aligned. The habits that dulled your discernment. The old version of you that made excuses for delay, it has to die. There is no such thing as partial surrender. You don't get resurrection without burial. You don't get oil without pressing. And you don't get inheritance without letting go of Egypt. When Elijah called Elisha, the first thing Elisha did was burn his plow and slaughter the oxen, the tools of his former life. He didn't say, "Let me keep this in case it doesn't work out." He set fire to what he was leaving so that he could never turn back. Because true calling eliminates the option to return, you've been holding on to just in case connections, just in case habits, just in case attitudes that act as emotional crutches, but they've become chains. And if you don't burn the bridge, it will become a snare, not because it's evil, but because it no longer fits who you are. And hear this, the enemy will always try to make your old life feel comfortable just before your new one manifests. He'll whisper nostalgia, steer, loneliness, bring back old voices dressed in new language, but recognize it for what it is, a temptation to dilute your fire in exchange for familiar chains. You've come too far to go back. The Word of God paints this moment with piercing clarity in Luke, chapter 9, verse 62. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. This isn't about guilt. It's about focus. The kind of focus that locks eyes with the future and refuses to break gaze. The kind of focus that knows the cost and says, yes, anyway. The kind that has cried enough, learned enough, grown enough to know that no bridge back is worth missing what's ahead. So light the match. Let the fear burn. Let the old name burn. Let the false identity burn. Let the lesser vision burn. You're not doing this in rebellion, you're doing it in revelation. Because now you see, and now that you've seen, you can't unsee. There's nothing for you back there but delay. But up ahead, there's clarity, authority, fire, fruit, legacy, impact, freedom, joy that doesn't come from approval, peace that doesn't come from circumstances, oil that can't be faked, the kind of wholeness that feels unfamiliar because it's been waiting for you to step into it. But you must burn the bridge, not to make a scene, but to make space for what's holy, for what's next, for what's yours. This is where the old you ends, and the real you emerges fire-tested, not turning back. This is the hour of the revealed ones, chosen one. Everything until now has been preparation, not punishment. What felt like silence was sanctification. What felt like isolation was initiation. You were not being sidelined. You were being summoned. Heaven has not only heard your prayers, it has documented your becoming. And now, the time of hiding ends. There is a divine unveiling happening in the Spirit. The veils are being lifted. The covers are being removed. The ones who were overlooked, dismissed, misunderstood, they are being revealed not as survivors, but as sent ones. Those who were mocked for their fire will now be sought out for their flame. Those who kept burning in obscurity will now carry fire into nations. You are among them. And no, you didn't campaign for this. You didn't manipulate your way into influence. You didn't pretend to be ready. You just stayed obedient. You just kept showing up. And now God is about to do what man could never orchestrate. He is revealing you in the exact time heaven assigned, not one moment early, and not 1 second late. This isn't about popularity. This is about position. The revealed ones are not those who seek spotlight. They are those who carry light. Their presence shifts the atmosphere. Their voice silences confusion. Their words break chains. Their eyes carry fire and mercy in the same breath. They don't need platforms to prove anything, because the anointing speaks before they do. The pain, the pruning, the stretching, it wasn't in vain. It forged something in you that can now be trusted. You've been through too much to speak casually. You've lost too much to live carelessly. The revealed ones walk differently, not out of pride, but out of reverence. Because when you've met God in the furnace, you carry fire without even trying. This is your commissioning, not into ministry as usual, not into religion as routine, but into kingdom demonstration. This is not about building a brand. This is about becoming a beacon. You are not being released to fit in. You are being released to confront, to disrupt, to awaken, to call dry bones into life again. Some will not understand. That's okay. They didn't understand John the Baptist either, the one who cried in the wilderness until the Messiah stepped forward. They didn't understand Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, who felt too young, too soft, too alone. They didn't understand Esther, the hidden woman crowned for a moment of national intercession, and they won't always understand you, because you weren't made for understanding. You were made for obedience. And now, your obedience becomes movement. Heaven is releasing divine acceleration over your life, not to rush you, but to redeem the time. What should have taken 10 years will happen in 1. The relationships you thought would take a lifetime to build will align in days. The influence you thought you'd never carry will be handed to you as an assignment, not a reward. Because God is not wasting any more time. He's revealing His remnant, and when He reveals you, it's not just to bless you. It's to plant you in dark places that need light, in heavy atmospheres that need glory, in broken spaces that need the sound of resurrection. The Apostle Paul gives voice to this unveiling in Romans chapter 8, verse 19. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. Now, that's you. All of creation has been groaning for the moment when the real ones rise. Not the loudest, not the most followed, but the ones who have died to themselves and come alive to truth, the ones who have been crushed, purified, and now walk with heaven's authority, not for self, but for service. And now, beloved, you walk forward as one of them. You will not need to prove your place. Heaven already did. You will not need to defend your authority. The fruit will speak. You will not need to explain your calling. The oil will confirm it. Just walk. Walk into the next space with your shoulders back, not in arrogance, but in alignment. Walk with your eyes clear, not distracted by noise, but focused on assignment. Walk as if you've been sent because you have. Walk as one who has been chosen because you are. The hour is late. The remnant is rising. The mantle is yours. The call is real. And now the veil is lifted. You have been revealed. Chosen one. If your spirit is still burning, that's not emotion. That's confirmation. You didn't just hear words, you heard alignment. Something in you stood up. Something ancient. Something eternal. Something holy. You didn't just read a message. You stepped into a mantle. And now, You're faced with a choice. Will you carry what was just handed to you or let it pass you by? If this journey from the first word to the last met you in secret places, like this message, not as routine, but as recognition, your Amen doesn't have to be loud to echo in heaven. Share it with the one who's growing weary in the shadows. You never know what one act of obedience can do. Sometimes, breakthrough arrives disguised as a shared link. Subscribe if you haven't already, because your spirit was never meant to walk alone. This space was created for the called, for the set apart, for the ones whose yes costs more than applause. Stay connected. There's more. And if this word didn't just touch but transformed something in you, don't scroll past the moment to respond. Give where you've been fed. Your seed carries your agreement, and your agreement moves things in the spirit. When you sow into anointing, you're not supporting a voice, you're sustaining the sound God is using to awaken His remnant. Finally, as a simple prophetic act, drop a comment below. Type something true. Type something surrendered. Type something real. Because your voice matters in this moment. You've crossed over now, and the world will never be the same because you said yes.